Good evening, Chicago. I'm Darrious Hilmon, and for Andy Zopp, along with special guest co-host Dr. Suzet McKinney, and this is Chicago Newsroom 2.0.
Matt Johansson and Swati Staley join this week's roundtable to discuss the ongoing government shutdown, ICE's continued and unwelcome presence in the city, and the countdown to the passing of the 2026 city budget.
Access Living CEO Karen Tamley joins the program to discuss the catastrophic impacts of the Trump administration's gutting of special education funding. Trilogy's Darren Dunham and Jeff Fenwick join us to share how their organization's work is helping to redefine what community-based mental wellness looks like. And in observance of Domestic Violence Prevention Month, Ji-Hae Kim, Madiha Husseini, and Yi-Ja Hu are here to help us unpack what prevention looks like and how culture and language can impact access to those services. We've curated an incredible hour of news and information just for you. And it all starts right now. On this week's roundtable, we're unpacking three stories that are defining this moment, each one testing the balance between power, policy, and the people. First, Mayor Brandon Johnson has unveiled his 2026 Chicago City budget proposal. It's a $16.6 billion spending plan that promises no property tax hikes while closing a $1 billion shortfall. The mayor calls it a values-based budget built on equity, investment, and fiscal responsibility. But critics are asking, are those promises sustainable or just politically convenient? Meanwhile, as the city wrestles with its own finances, federal agents and ICE operations continue to rattle communities across Chicago. Despite court orders limiting arrests and requiring accountability, immigration enforcement actions continue to spark fear, lawsuits, and protests, especially in neighborhoods like Pilsen, Little Village, and Broadview. Advocates say this isn't law enforcement, it's trauma playing out in real time. And finally, the federal government shutdown is heading toward the 1-month mark. Tens of thousands of federal workers remain furloughed, the courts are running out of money, and programs serving veterans, seniors, and families are facing crippling delays. What started as political brinksmanship has become an economic and moral test of national leadership. As always, to try to help us make sense of a world that is changing quicker than we can keep up, we're joined by Roundtable regulars Matt Johansson, co-founder, Just Act Partners, and Swati Staley, partner, Just Act Partners, the Just Act Partners Roundtable Day.
Let's go.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Sure are. Let's go.
All right, it's all local, but let's begin with the 2026 proposed city budget. Mayor Johnson, as I said in the opening, thinks this is a moral document, one that reflects city values while closing the gap, a $1 billion gap, without raising property taxes. But critics are saying that his reliance on one-time fixes, like what a record-setting TIF surplus pullout, could create deeper holes next year. How sustainable is this plan really? The fits and starts, what's your overall first impression of the plan, Matt?
Directionally correct would be my overall assessment. It's got a lot of gaps, okay, but directionally correct. I think the most important thing at the moment, the world that you talked about, Chicagoans cannot bear any more burden. So staying away from property tax, staying away from grocery tax, those are the right moves. I think we need a little more austerity in there. And where we place corporate tax, moving away from Chicagoans to corporate, I think can be better placed. And
than
look
the
forward
current
to talking about that more.
Okay,
that's right.
We'll get to it. Your opening thoughts.
I agree. I think directionally it's in the right path, but at the same time, I think to Matt's point, I think there are some significant there's some hard decisions that aren't being made as a result of this version of the budget that I think good governance requires. I do think that there are some interesting solutions that are proposed, some that I think are a bit overstated in the impact that they're going to do to actually bridge the significant gap that exists. But at the same time, we are in a climate where there are significant dollars that were promised to the city of Chicago through the federal government that are no longer on the table. And frankly, anything that continues to be promised is still at risk, not only through the shutdown, but also because of the current administration. So I think we do have to make some hard decisions as part of this budget, but I do think it's a good first start.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the things, some of the key headlines from the budget. In addition to the social media tax, there is the one that's making a lot of noise. Just this past Tuesday, as the public hearings on the budget began, Governor Pritzker spoke at the Economic Club of Chicago. And that is this revised head tax, is what is being called on large corporations. Clearly ambitious and controversial. Here's what Governor Pritzker said at the City Club on Tuesday. And I'm quoting a bit here. He said he is four-squared opposed to the corporate head tax being proposed by Mayor Brandon Johnson. He goes on at that same luncheon to say he recommends instead, and I think this gets to some of the austerity you were referring to, Swati, he recommends that the city look at further cuts to its budget while looking for ways to actually grow its economy. He also said the revival of this per-employee tax paid by companies in the city limits penalizes the very thing we want, which is we want more employment in the city of Chicago. Do you agree with the mayor's assessments both on what he feels about the head tax and his views on additional cost-saving measures and actually looking for new sources of income?
I do agree with the governor on this. I think that there are other ways to recoup. I think the mayor's office is estimating that the head tax will create $100 million.
Do you believe that number?
I don't, because I do think that there is a trade-off that will happen as a result of this tax. And I do think that, when the tax was eliminated under Mayor Rahm Emanuel, he called it the job killer. And this is something that I think we have to be able to balance in a better way. When it was eliminated under Mayor Emanuel, that level of tax was $4, I believe, per employee per month. And the proposed tax now is $21 per head. That is a fivefold increase that I think is unsustainable. And some
progressive wanted as high as 40.
Right, and I think that we have to be able to balance these big employers that are investing in Chicago, employing thousands and thousands of Chicagoans, are disincentivized to continue to make those investments and continue to keep those people hired. It's going to be very easy for a CEO or a corporation to be able to justify exiting Chicago either for the suburbs or elsewhere in the country, right? And so I think that we need to be very careful about the level that we can leverage corporate tax in order to protect city jobs. I don't believe that the level of this tax is correct. I think we will see more significant losses that will not allow us to recoup this $100 million that they believe that it can create.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would add is not just flies in the face of local corporate investment here, but also flies in the face of wanting more workers back in the city.
Absolutely.
More commerce back into the city, right? We talk about it all the time. You see an editorial about it every other week. We need more workers back more often. And this would just be one more reason for companies to throttle, remote work and keep people at home. So I think for that reason, it is regressive and it is not, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I would much rather them focus even more on kind of the big tech tax. So if you think about, what is one of the biggest societal problems we have now is this massive growth of inequality in income and wealth being driven a lot by big tech. Right, so putting a tax on cloud computing and things of that nature, finding more creative ways to take these companies, like, if you look at those big seven, the magnificent seven that's driving all the growth in data centers and cloud computing, They made $1.6 trillion of revenue last year. They had over $400 billion of profit. Again, we're talking about a $16 billion budget for the city. That's $400 billion of profit. And that profit is coming from Chicagoans using those platforms. And those companies aren't driving much value back, right? They are extracting from us. They are not. I would love to see more aggressive moves there to those who are extracting from Chicago and less on those that are actually here and investing.
Hear you. There are two things that I noticed on Tuesday of this week as the hearings were starting to happen at City Council. There seems to be, tell me if I'm reading early signs correct, specific to the TIF sweep, there seems to be some less than expected support even from his progressive allies in the City Council over this record or close to record number, what it will mean to projects in each of their wards. Are you feeling the same sort of, we are in for a bumpy road, if even the closest allies are already ringing?
Yeah, not only feeling it, but believe it as well. Okay. Right, this ring of South and West Side investments coming through TIF and supported by TIF, right? They are going to have an outsized impact, right, if this goes through as planned. So yes.
Okay. In our limited time, we have to move on. You know we'll be talking about this. What is it now? It has to be approved by December, the budget?
Yeah, I don't know what the timeline is, but it will be bumped.
I have a feeling we'll be having this conversation a lot more, so that's just to get us started. Let's talk about this government shutdown that is now the third longest in history. I think as of today, we're at the 25-day mark, so we're rushing toward a month. Furloughs are happening, the back and forth. At what are we at, the 8th or 9th vote? So there's been no real movement. I'm going to ask this question. Right now, who's winning the public opinion war? Democrats, Republican, or I'll give you a third category, the current president. Swati, let's go with you. Or is everybody losing?
Well, everyone is losing as a baseline. I would say that, but I think Democrats are actually winning this sort of war of attrition because they have no control of any of the House or the House, the Senate, or the White House, and so truly, I think that. This narrative that the presidential administration was attempting to really foster, that it's the Democrats who are at fault here because of the millions of illegal immigrants that were allegedly going to be given health care. I don't know that the average American one continues to believe that, which because it was demonstrably false. But at the same time, it also doesn't impact their day-to-day life, like many of the essential services that are being cut now as a result of this government shutdown.
And it feels like even if there tends to be, because nobody ever tells the truth anymore, just straight up. But it seems that, to your point, the concerns unreasonable about illegal immigrants getting health care, one, not true, but are overwritten by Marjorie Taylor Greene now saying that her children are about to lose health care. It feels like this is the one that has cut through the noise. It hits, it's not esoteric, it's not abstract, it is literally as the Affordable Care Act enrollment season opens and you see these new numbers pop up, it's real. Are you feeling the same thing?
100%. As unsavory as it sounds, even talking about winners and losers in this, right? Because this is, again, devastating for so many. But the Democrats have played this brilliantly, right? So,
which is, let's mark that because that does not happen.
Right.
That doesn't happen.
In a world in which Democratic supporters have been begging for leadership, do anything, have any stand, they picked the right message, and credit to Schumer and Jeffries that affordable health care, right? just hit it and have stayed on it. And the GOP has not been able to find, especially Speaker Johnson, has not been able to find his footing at all in this argument. He's tried.
He's becoming more petulant. It appears every day that he's not cutting through this.
You find 17 different arguments that haven't worked. And you start feeling petulant, I bet. Yeah.
Got it. I'm sure we'll be talking about this, unfortunately, in the next week or two. There doesn't seem to be movement. In our limited time, we always have such limited time, ICE, federal agents, if it's fair to say that the previous week, as far as the courts, was not a good week for the president, the current administration. I want to focus on two things. One, now taking this to the Supreme Court to get deployment happening here in Chicago. In the days since we last spoke, an appeals judge has overturned, so Portland is getting, so it still feels like no clear, their wins, their losses. Right. But now we're bringing in the Supreme Court, in addition to the federal judge who has raised concerns about ICE agents violating rights. Now, here's what I want to just get your thoughts on. So this past Monday, she had ordered the lead for ICE here in the city into court. The Friday prior, somehow, magically, it was pre-planned, that person was pushed back to D.C. Is this a case of, as my mother would say, the administration playing right in our face?
Oh, yes.
Okay. 100% clear answer.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's also the incident of an ICE vehicle being involved in a significant accident and ended up somehow in Maine. Evidence of a major accident that resulted in multiple arrests. Absolutely, the federal government, through ICE, through the courts, are absolutely playing in our face.
Yes. Okay. Started playing in your face by deploying untrained, unqualified, unhinged agents in masks and unmarked vehicles.
Just raw with...
From day one.
Okay, clear. This is going to the Supreme Court. The state has given its response. Just a gut feeling. What is the Supreme Court going to do here?
This doesn't go our way. I cannot believe it does, especially after Portland went the other way.
Well,
you see light?
Give me hope.
Portland was a panel decision of 3 judges. The hope is that when there is a rehearing requested, the full Ninth Circuit in Portland, that we'll be able to see a decision that actually affirms the lower court's decision to prohibit the deployment of troops in Portland. I am hopeful that this Supreme Court could possibly take a look at some very well-reasoned arguments in the Illinois case. That was an exceptionally, if you haven't read it, you should read the entirety of the case put on by Illinois. It is very well written, and there are some very novel arguments that I think are very compelling, and I am going to remain optimistic that that my legal brethren on the Supreme Court will make the right decision, and I will always hold out hope that the checks and balances that were implemented through the Constitution will ultimately prevail.
I want to thank you because you just gave me some hope that I didn't have before we started this conversation. And sometimes hope is all we have. Final thing I'm going to talk about very quickly. This past Saturday, more than 2,700 No King rallies happened throughout the country. Numbers are showing in excess of 7 million. Here in Chicago, just over 250,000. Why is this important right now?
Think of how we feel when the other side is doing so many criminal things and how deflated and unhopeful we feel. These actions make us more hopeful, right? It's not a moral victory. It is something we need to keep people focused and together against tyranny.
Did either of you attend?
And I saw it when I was in Denver this past weekend. Unfortunately, I was not in Chicago this weekend.
Did not. And you?
I did not, and I'll tell you why. It is not my black job. I root for it. I'm happy that everyone's there, but I'm very clear right now. I and those who look like me did quite a bit of that over the past 4 or 5 years.
Correct.
So we're gonna take a step out, support it fully, but personally, no.
Makes sense.
Okay. That's it. This is our time together. You're coming back. As always, in times like this, I'm sure our viewers, this shared community, we appreciate your leadership, your authenticity, but your knowledge. In a time like this, we're all we got. So as always, thank you both so much. You will be back. This is your home, and our viewers appreciate you as much as we do. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for having us, as always.
Okay. On the other side of the break, Access Living CEO Karen Tamley joins Suzet to discuss the fallout from the current administration's decision to gut special education funding. Stay with us.
Cable cord cutting, funding rollbacks, growing efforts to silence community voices. The stakes have never been higher for a community television station. Since 1983, KNTV has proudly served as Chicago's home for truth, access, and accountability. From City Hall to your front door, we make sure your story is told. But to keep it local and to keep it real, we need you. Please visit cantv.org and donate today. The future of Chicago's voice is in your hands.
This week, we turn our attention to a community that often bears the brunt of policy decisions made far from the people they affect most: Chicagoans living with disabilities. Across the country and right here in Illinois, major changes are on the horizon that could reshape access, equity, and independence for millions. At the federal level, the U.S. Department of Education's elimination of its Office of Special Education programs has raised serious concern about how students with disabilities will be protected and supported in classrooms. At the same time, proposed Medicaid cuts threaten to strip away the services that make daily life possible for thousands of Illinois residents, from home care and personal assistance to therapies and medical equipment. And closer to home, Illinois faces what many are calling a fiscal cliff in public transportation funding, a shortfall that could severely limit mobility and access for riders with disabilities who depend on CTA, Metra, and PACE to get to work, school, and medical care. Joining me to unpack what all this means and what's at stake is Karen Tamley, President and CEO of Access Living, one of the nation's leading disability rights and advocacy organizations. Karen, welcome to the Newsroom.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So we're going to really talk about three topics today. So let's jump right in and get started with the elimination of the Office of Special Education. The U.S. Department of Education decision to eliminate the Office of Special Education has raised red flags across the country. What does this move signal to you, and what are the potential consequences for students with disabilities, not just in Chicago, but beyond Chicago as well?
Well, Suzette, you are correct that with this recent layoff of hundreds of employees at the Department of Education's Office of Special Education has truly decimated the office, and the disability community, parents, students with disabilities across the nation are extremely concerned and upset about what this means. The Department of Ed and the Office of Special Education in particular is a really, really important oversight and enforcement body that families can turn to when their students' rights are violated, their rights to a free and appropriate education. As someone with a disability myself, I personally benefited from these federal disability rights. Growing up, I was sent to a segregated school for kids with disabilities, and it was only until the federal law was put in place that I got to go to my neighborhood school along with my peers and without disabilities. And so the impact of these federal civil rights laws to grant accommodations and allow students to get the supports they need in the classroom are absolutely critical. And so when those rights are denied, families will not have a real good place to turn to get those services secured for their students. Furthermore, I think that the other issue is really that these complaints are just so backlogged from what we've been hearing. There's thousands of complaints out there that have not been handled. Meanwhile, students are waiting to get relief and equal access to education. And of another concern, we're, deeply concerned that special education funding that goes to districts across the nation without the staffing will be delayed, making it harder for students to receive the services that they need in the classroom. And then I just think lastly, the Department of Ed also provides really important legal guidance and research on education of students with disabilities. And all these things combined will have a very, very detrimental impact on a segment of our population who already faces education disparities and poor educational outcomes. So this is very concerning for our community.
Absolutely. It represents a catastrophic loss of services. And,
Yes.
In addition to that, many parents rely on this office for oversight, enforcement, and accountability under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So without that, it means that mechanisms remain to ensure schools uphold their legal responsibilities to students with special needs. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think at the state level in Illinois, we are fortunate that the governor and the State Board of Education are committed to upholding the rights of students with disabilities. We still have a robust state process for handling Individuals with Disabilities Education Act complaints around educational plans, and adherence to those plans. And, we really hope that those will be upheld regardless of what happens at the federal level. The larger concern that our community is seeing playing out is really the protection of rights of students with disabilities under kind of a different set of regulations, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which is not really there at the state level. And those requirements really focus on accommodations within the general classroom setting. They can include everything from physical accessibility to the provision of assistive technology, note takers, and the like. And so because that enforcement doesn't necessarily happen at the state level, really at the federal level is where it happens. With these cuts, we are hoping in this next legislative session to really work on establishing a 504 enforcement system in Illinois to protect those rights for students with disabilities in Illinois.
Sure. Let's switch and talk a little bit about Medicaid cuts and their impact. So proposed federal and state Medicaid cuts are prompting fears that, again, essential supports for patients with disabilities, people that rely on services such as home care, assistive technology, and medical equipment could also be on the chopping block. What would those cuts mean in real terms for the people that your organization, Access Living, serves?
So Access Living serves a majority of people with disabilities who are very low income. Many who rely on Medicaid, both for healthcare, but also for home and community-based services. Home and community-based services include things such as an in-home personal assistant that would come in and help you with bathing, dressing, meal preparation, getting ready for your day. Many of my consumers that we serve, and even some of my employees, rely on HCBS to be able to get to work, right? To be part of their community.
Right.
And, we are very concerned that with the Medicaid cuts, that this program could be at risk. Living in the community and having that right to live in the community free of a more institutionalized setting such as a nursing home isn't just more humane, it's cost effective. And we know that living in the community, living in your own home and getting that support is about $5,000 to $6,000 a month, whereas living in a nursing home is double that.
Sure.
Living in a state-operated institution is about $300,000 per year per person in Medicaid dollars. And so Access Living has a program where we're actively helping people move out of nursing homes and institutional settings into the community that they want to live in. And so I think one of the things that we are really stressing is not just that this is a cost savings to the state. This is a humane issue. This is a right that people have to live in the community free from an institution. And that, the problem is that home services are an entitlement, whereas home care is optional, whereas nursing home care would be an entitlement. And so when, budgets are squeezed and Medicaid dollars are becoming tighter and tighter, states might have to make really, difficult decisions to cut some of these home and community-based service programs that our community absolutely relies on, and is truly a lifeline for them.
Absolutely. So the message in what you're saying, Karen, is that Medicaid isn't just a health program. It allows people with disabilities to live independently. So with that in mind, what do you say to policymakers who often only see Medicaid as a budget line item?
Yes, we really emphasize that this isn't just a policy issue in the distance or a line item, but something that truly impacts human lives. It impacts people with disabilities. It impacts families that have a member with a disability. And so what we really stress is that we were hoping to stave off a lot of these Medicaid cuts. We are really advocating for an investment in home and community-based services that focus on individual needs and are cost effective. When we were down in Springfield last spring, all of the Centers for Independent Living in Illinois, of which there's 22, we all work collectively to move people out of nursing homes into the community. And we saved the state over $9 million in Medicaid funds. And so really showing that this is a cost savings issue. It is a human issue. It's about dignity. It's where people want to live. And so those are the things that we are trying to stress with our lawmakers, both at the state level, but also at the federal level. We've been on Capitol Hill multiple times this year, having meetings with legislators and with our elected officials in district as well, making these really important points.
Thank you for that. So as we come to the end of our time, Karen, just really quickly, and I hate to cut our conversation short, but just give us a few seconds and tell us what you think the impacts of the looming fiscal cliff in Illinois will have on people with disabilities in terms of those who depend on accessible transit every single day.
Sure. Well, as the public has heard, we do have a $200 million fiscal cliff where we're going to see severe gaps in funding for CTA, Metra, and PACE. The disability community disproportionately relies on public transportation because we're low income, because people can't afford to own a wheelchair accessible vehicle or own their own private vehicle. And so public transportation is a really foundation of our community's daily life, a way to get to work, to attend school, medical visits, being part of their community. And so if we do not see funds to plug this fiscal gap, we are going to see very significant cuts across this region in public transportation. That's going to affect people with disabilities who ride fixed route, who ride paratransit, which is the door-to-door service for folks that cannot ride a fixed route bus or train. And we're already seeing caps on the TAP and WRAP program, which is a taxi rideshare service that is very, very popular and embraced by people with disabilities in the Chicago region to get to where they need to be. And we're already seeing caps on that program as well. And so for us, it's about community living. And,
Sure.
We are very concerned about continued isolation, job loss, missed medical appointments, and even fare increases that will fall on people that are extremely low income and can least afford that. So I'm really glad that you brought up all these three issues, because as you can see, our community is being hit from multiple directions, right? On the healthcare front, on the community services front, on the transportation front, and in the classroom. And so I appreciate being able to just talk about what that means for the millions of people with disabilities across the nation and all of us living in Illinois.
It's an important conversation, Karen, and we thank you so much for joining us today here in the newsroom to discuss, and we hope to have you back very soon.
Thanks so much.
On the other side of the break, Darrious discusses mental wellness with Trilogy's Darren Dunham and Jeff Fenwick. Stay with us.
In times of political turmoil and economic uncertainty, telling the stories of our city and neighborhoods is more critical than ever. At CAN TV, we do just that. But with shrinking budgets and pressure on independent media, the future of hyper-local news is at risk. Your generous financial support ensures that we can keep shining a light on what matters most, right here in the city of Big Shoulders. Visit cantv.org and donate today. The power of community television depends on you. You, me, we are CAN TV.
In a city as vibrant and complex as Chicago, conversations about mental health aren't just important, they're essential. For more than 50 years, Trilogy Behavioral Healthcare has been a cornerstone of community-based mental health support, helping thousands of Chicagoans navigate the challenges of mental illness, trauma, recovery, and doing so with dignity and compassion. Today, Trilogy is taking its mission even further, opening new doors of access through its Wellness Center in Chatham, expanding crisis response programs and offering mental health awareness training that empowers everyday Chicagoans to recognize the signs of distress and connect others to help before crisis hits. Darren Dunham and Jeff Fenwick join us now to talk about what community-centered mental health care looks like, the importance of prevention and early intervention, and building a city where asking for help is seen as a sign of strength, not stigma. Darren, Jeff, welcome, welcome, welcome. I've been looking forward to this conversation with both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Before we begin, a week ago Thursday, I was at your annual gala, and I said to you, Jeff, I may have used a word I'm uncomfortable saying here, but it was freaking amazing. The mission-centered, the work, as someone who has really been committed for myself and for anyone I touch to take away the stigma around mental wellness, especially for under-resourced, under-supported groups. I cannot imagine a world that I would have survived the past 6 years without my therapist of 10 years. So thank you both for being here. I want to talk about this because this is brilliant, and you talked about it during the gala last week, and that is this new Wellness Center in Chatham. You've been doing this for 50 years, doing it incredibly well, but this new Wellness Center is representing a major expansion for you. So what inspired it, and what do you want this center to mean for the communities it serves?
So thank you again for having us. The new Mental Wellness Center in Chatham really was a long time coming, right? It's something that we initiated because we knew that there was a need, right? I think the need is known on the south side and on the southwest side of Chicago. So we knew that there was a lot to be done. Trilogy has been on the south side of Chicago in various forms, right, in smaller capacities for about 15 years at this point. We knew that we could do more and that we were ready to do more. So several years ago, we made the investment in that building at 8541 South State
And
Street.
in that community.
In that community, absolutely, in the Chatham community. So we knew that we were ready to do more and provide access to care for the communities and the neighborhoods in that area.
And I got a feeling from our previous conversation, but certainly at the gala, where you did such a brilliant job of, I go to so many of these events, galas, it's gala season in Chicago, and sometimes I'm sitting there, I go, what are we here for again? And at your gala last week, I felt it. It permeated. The gentleman who shared the letter. So I get a feeling of intentionality with your work. So when you all call this, you use the term wellness center, it suggests to me, tell me if I'm correct, a commitment to a holistic approach to mental health and mental wellness. One, is that true? And two, what makes that different from a traditional clinic or hospital setting?
Right. So first, that's absolutely true. That's 100% correct.
I got it right.
Yeah. So really, the goal that we're opening this new center with, right? It's about holistic care. We're coming into the community, and we're able to provide community-centered, individual, person-centered care, right? So the space is a former medical center.
Oh, wow.
So we're just in the final phases of our capital campaign, right? It's called Breaking Down Walls. We had that idea. We named it Breaking Down Walls for the purpose that we're taking that space and opening it up, right? So it was previously a doctor's office, right, with smaller offices and things
So
like
literally and figuratively.
Literally and figuratively breaking down walls to make it an open, accessible, bright space that is there for the community, so that they can come in and know that they have a place to go, know that they have a place where they can turn for help when they need help, right? So,
and the doors are open now.
they are. We just several weeks ago we had our grand opening. So we dropped the balloons. We had guests out, and it was a fantastic day. So we really, we're spreading the word that we're open. We're there for people who need help.
Bravo. And Darren, there is another program that you all are helping to lead that I find, and I think our viewers will find very meaningful, and that's the Mental Health Awareness Training Program. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So it's an innovative program, mental health awareness, helping community members recognize, respond to medical health challenges. How exactly does this program work?
Well, what community members, various community-based organizations are able to do, reach out to Trilogy through our websites, through flyers that we leave throughout the community, and contact us and schedule a training. Now, one of the best things about our training is it's absolutely free of cost.
Wow.
For us, for the
So can that be
community.
church groups, paraprofessionals at schools? Is that the type of folks who would use this program?
Absolutely. We've gone to various schools.
Okay.
We've gone to funeral homes, barbershops. We've been all throughout the communities carrying a message that recovery is possible. That when there are mental health crises going on, that there are ways and methods to address them so that you can have better outcomes.
Yeah. And this is almost, I don't mean to, but my mind is, as you're talking, this is akin to CPR training, to know how to provide support or what to look for, the signs of a medical crisis. Is that a fair comparison?
Absolutely, because just as someone can have a medical crisis, a person can have a mental health crisis. Yeah. And a lot of times in our underserviced communities, people in mental health crisis wind up in fatal conditions. What we'd like to do is reduce the incidence of that. And one of the first things that have to be done is conversation. That's what we offer. Okay. Conversations, collaborations, so that the stigma behind mental health and mental illness is reduced. Yeah. Because when we speak about it, bring it out into the open, we're able to recognize when people are in those situations and address it appropriately.
How long is the training?
The training lasts about an hour and a half, 2 hours max, and that's including time for questions and answers.
Okay. And I can come back and do touch-ups as much as I want to, or my group wants to.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I love that. This came up in the conversation last week, and I'm sure so much of your work is supported through Medicaid and the access that gives to people in our community. How are you advocating for the men and women who receive your services as we are collectively and individually bracing for what we know are cuts coming, and how are you going to work to counteract that? What are the pathways to counteracting what clearly are significant cuts?
Yeah, thank you for that. We're in the process of advocating for the people that we serve through a very direct approach, right? So we have an understanding that the population that we serve, they're marginalized. They have significant mental illness. Most people that we serve have very little income, right? Chronic illness. They are our most marginalized neighbors. They have a greater need. They feel with a greater sense of urgency all the little things in terms of expenses and things like that, right? So whether it's rent or groceries or a new pair of shoes, right? So all those components, all those things that mean so much. For the people that we serve, there's a heightened sense of vulnerability. So we're really leaning into that right now, and we're working with our communities to raise awareness around supporting those aspects. Because with cuts around Medicaid, we're going to find that, across the board, hospitals...
The horrible choices that folks are left with, rent or a prescription that is sorely needed, unimaginable, but
Absolutely.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah, but you all are, and you all shared it last week, doing the work. Yes, everything you're doing is incredible, but I do want to say this, the humanity that I saw on display in our previous conversations, getting to know more about your organization, the humanity is absolutely, we have dealt with, as most families in America, mental wellness, mental health issues in my own family, very close to home for me. So to hear your commitment, and you do work directly with some of the folks you serve with your clients.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. We have a drop-in center there at 8541 South State Street, and it's just as the name implies, just drop in. If you're having challenges, struggles, mental illness, just come on in. You'll meet people just like you who can help you feel comfortable, no stigma.
And I believed you all when you said it. I felt it, that you were walking the talk. So folks who need this, who deserve this level of care and concern, how can they learn more, one, about Trilogy, and two, how to tap into services and or support this incredible and critically important work? How can they reach out to you very quick?
Best way is go to trilogyinc.org, right? So that is just head to the website, and we have on our website there's a phone number and an email that folks can get connected. They can pick up the phone and they can say, I need help. I need services today.
And that's it.
We have a crisis number that people can call. And we're always looking for people who are able to help and care and support and lean in as volunteers, as board members.
Bravo. Gentlemen, I cannot thank you both enough for being here, sharing this incredible work. We're, on behalf of the grateful community that you are here, that you are in our communities, Chatham and others, doing this incredible work and doing it with just such joy. Thank you for that. On the other side of the break, Jihye Kim, Medea Husseini, and Yi Jahu join Dr. Suzet to talk about domestic violence prevention and the resources and supports available for victims. Stay with us.
In times of political turmoil and economic uncertainty, telling the stories of our city and neighborhoods is more critical than ever. At CAN TV, we do just that. But with shrinking budgets and pressure on independent media, the future of hyper-local news is at risk. Your generous financial support ensures that we can keep shining a light on what matters most, right here in the city of Big Shoulders. Visit cantv.org and donate today. The power of community television depends on you. You, me, we are CAN TV.
October is Domestic Violence Prevention Month, a time to shine a light on an issue that affects every community, regardless of race, income, or background, yet too often remains hidden behind closed doors. Across Chicago, community organizations are doing life-saving work to support survivors, educate the public, and confront the cycles of violence that silence so many. But prevention isn't just about intervention. It's about awareness, access, and changing the way our communities respond when someone reaches out for help. Joining me now are three remarkable women leading this critical work on the front lines. Ji-Hae Kim, Executive Director of CAN WIN, Madiha Husani, Outreach Coordinator at Apnagar, and Ijia Hu, a Domestic Violence Case Manager at CASTLE, the Chinese American Service League. Ladies, welcome to the newsroom. So let's get started this afternoon by just understanding the landscape. Obviously, Domestic Violence Prevention Month is a time to raise awareness, but for advocates like each of you, this work happens year-round. What does prevention look like in your communities, and how have the needs changed in recent years? Ji-Hae, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So 2025 marks CAN WIN's 35th anniversary, and we were founded by immigrant women in the Korean community. Mm-hmm. And so we understand very thoroughly what it takes to really deeply engage the community and build trust, because survivors are not just gonna, simply see a hotline number and pick up a phone and call us. We have to do so much trust and engagement in order to, let the survivor know what it's like when you call and what kind of options there are and resources. So we invest a lot in education, in culturally, linguistically accessible manner, and we do that through different peer-to-peer education, outreach, and as well as leadership building in the community. Mm-hmm. And we also reach out to churches, temples, and all those pockets of communities that many immigrants visit and build their lives around. So that's how we do a lot of different engagements.
Really helping to break down the fear. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Madiha.
Yeah, and similar to CAN WIN, Apnagar is also doing a lot of great work across Chicago in October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we are reaching out to people of all ages, whether it's initiating health fairs for entire families or for elderly folks, or having a conversation on healthy communication and boundaries with younger girls, or on healthy relationships, consent, and intimacy with college students. And so what we are trying to really emphasize is that every individual is accountable to show up or to do something to spread awareness and to end any form of abuse or violence that we are experiencing personally and in our communities.
Thank you for that. Wow. Ijia.
Yeah, kind of similar with education. We have educational brochures ready to grab for community members who came to us for different social services that talks about how abuse look like and what kind of signs to watch out for and what kind of legal resource we have in the community, so that we're creating an environment where it's okay to talk about domestic violence and it is not a taboo topic. And then for staff training, we also train them on how to provide trauma-informed care and also signs to look out for when community members come to us and tell us their stories. We know the signs, and then we can guide them to relevant resources in a timely manner. And last but not least, we do have a youth mental health clinician that go into the community to talk to the younger generation about things like what is healthy relationship boundaries and how to navigate a relationship, so that we're stopping the cycle of violence from a younger age.
Really just empowering the community from within and providing those resources and that information. Yeah. Let's talk about misconceptions. What are some of the misconceptions about domestic violence that still exist, especially in communities where family reputation, faith, or even cultural norms make it harder for victims to come forward? Who would like to start? Ijia, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I guess the first that comes to mind is still this kind of internalized stigma. And personally, I also see that working with survivors when they feel like there's a lot of shame to talk about what they're going through with their family members or friends, which can be really harmful in ways because we know how a network of support can be really important in the recovery process. So that has been an issue, but really it is not the problem of survivors. I think what breed this kind of internalized stigma is the culture of victim blaming that still exists within the community that makes it very hard for them to speak up about their experience. And that just speaks to, you know, the need for education on how violence, it is a systemic issue and also a culture issue, and the more we're trying to silence it, the more we're just going to have the violence continue.
That's right. That's right. Medea, I want to ask you about the ICE raids that have been taking place here in Chicago, but across Illinois. How have immigration enforcement practices and policies impacted domestic violence survivors that your organization serves, particularly those who may, again, still fear seeking assistance?
Yeah, so we are seeing there is even more heightened fear and isolation with our participants, survivors of domestic abuse in the community. And we are still doing all of our direct and advocacy work with providing services and programs and ensuring that what programs and care that is needed to our participants and to the community, that we're still continuing that work. And so it looks like being creative, it looks like being able to still provide those resources and those services, whether it's online legal aid support or by having an advocate, a legal advocate support a participant to their court hearing by creating a safety plan that is unique to them, that's safe for them, in order where they are able to accomplish all of their goals and there aren't those barriers in their place. So we are recognizing that there is this increased pressure, but we are still doing our best to provide advocacy work.
Absolutely. Jihye, preventing domestic violence really requires community involvement, whether that's from schools or workplaces to even faith organizations. What would you say to everyday Chicagoans? How can everyday Chicagoans play a role in prevention? And what does allyship really look like in real life?
Sure. I mean, I would say it really involves centering survivors' needs. And when Canwin did various surveys and listening sessions, we learned that survivors are very scared to disclose to anyone because of victim blaming attitudes and different cultural norms that perpetuate violence. When they disclose, what came back was, either saying endure, or forgive the harmed, or these different kind of responses that were not safe for the survivor. So learning how to be a safe person for somebody to disclose to you and be a first responder, and that really takes just listening without judgment and listening with confidentiality, and really trusting that survivor is the leader in their lives. And not pushing them to do something or this or that, and to be connected with organizations like us so that you are aware of the resources and options to be prepared for what you could do for the survivor. And I would also say investing, learning in healthy relationships, because with the development of AI and different types of chatbots, I think people are tending to withdraw more, isolating more, but really learning about healthy relationships, healthy conflict management, all of that is going to prepare you for that moment.
Absolutely, and those are all things that we can all do every day.
Yes.
Well, as we prepare to close our conversation, Ijia, I think I'll just turn to you and say, is there anything that you want to say today that we perhaps haven't talked about?
I think kind of along the same line to what Jihye was just talking about, like if we're thinking about how to prevent violence from happening within our community, it's really important that we start to practice consent and healthy boundaries in our own life, because abuse can happen on a large scale but also in such a small scale, and it's really important that we're taking the everyday step and awareness to stop that from happening, and also be like Jihye said, like a safe person for survivors to come to. Yeah.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining us in the newsroom today. Darrious.
That's our time for this week. Thank you to all of our guests and to you, Chicago, for making CAN TV a part of your day. And to you, Dr. Suzet McKinney, for always answering the call to service.
It's always my pleasure to support the incredible work you and your team do day in and day out to amplify the stories and voices that make ours one of the greatest cities in the world.
Agreed. And it's good because we're going to want you to come back in a few weeks, so say yes.
I will say yes.
Absolutely. In the meantime, on behalf of Suzet and the hard-working, Emmy-nominated team here at CAN TV, be well and well-informed.